What's going on, everybody? So I'm just gonna do a quick video on the gauges and the switches that I have in my truck. Once again, I got a 1996 Kentworth T600. It's a pretty old truck. It's almost 35 years old going on now, or 25 years old. So we'll just start from the left and kind of work my way over. On the left side here, this first gauge is your battery voltage. When I'm driving, it sits right about there, about 13 amps or 13 volts. And you just want to keep an eye on that, because this gauge will tell you if you've got something wrong with your lights, or you got a bad wire somewhere, or a ground is messed up. If you turn your lights on and all of a sudden it dips down, that could mean one of your lights is out, or you have, a break in the line somewhere and something's rubbing somewhere in your engine, or you got your alternator is bad. Next to that, you have your water temperature and then your engine oil temperature. These two gauges should be about equal. When the truck's running, at any time of the year, you want to make sure that the gauge is reading at about 170 to 180 for both. These diesel engines, they like to be running at around that temperature, under 200. And in the wintertime, you'll notice that when it gets really cold, especially up here in Minnesota, when it gets down to like -20, -30, both of these gauges, when you slow down, you can watch the gauges just dip down as the engine cools off in those cold weathers. This gauge right here is my oil pressure. This one's also a really important gauge to watch while I'm driving. This will let me know if something's happening in the engine, if I have a piston that goes out, or if I hit a rock or something and some debris underneath on the road and it cracks my oil pan. My oil pressure will drop down, and then I'll know that right away that I need to stop, pull over, and check the truck out. Right down here is my air filter. So there's a big filter in the engine compartment that cleans the air before it goes into the engine, and this just measures how much particulates are in there. And as that gauge fills up, that just means there's more and more schmoo kind of inside that filter. And around here, it's not so bad because it's not so dusty or anything. Not driving through any deserts, anything like that. But out west, in California, Arizona, in the desert areas, we get all that sand and that dust that's flying around. You'll want to keep an eye on this. And you can, with most filters, you can pull them out and use an air hose and just spray them off, and that'll clean them out. And then you just want to make sure that gauge isn't getting up too high around here. And then this last gauge right here is my turbo boost. So almost all diesel engines nowadays have a turbo in it, even your smaller ones that you find in your cars and your pickups. And this gauge just tells you how much pressure a boost is going into the engine. Obviously, the higher it goes, the more power I'm getting added into the engine. And then we'll go down here and cover these switches. So I got a couple switches here. So this first switch here gives me my floor lights. You can kind of see it lighting up down there. So at night, I can turn the switch on when I'm getting in and out of the truck, and it just gives me a nice little glow under here, so I can kind of see where I'm going, so I'm not tripping over my feet or any of the pedals and stuff as I'm getting in and out of the truck. This light turns on the floodlights behind the cab. So when I'm hooking up my trailer at night, this light turns on back there so I can see what I'm doing behind the truck. This switch will turn the engine fan on, so if it's on a really hot day and I'm sitting outside, I can manually flip this switch up and it'll turn the engine fan on and help cool the engine down. So that'd be where I'd be wanting to look at these two gauges right here, these temperature gauges. And if I'm noticing that temperature is getting really high and the fan's not kicking on, I can come down here and manually switch the fan on, and it'll just run the fan no matter what. And then this is just the engine override. So if for some reason the engine's keeps running and I need to shut it off, I can just flick this switch and it'll shut the truck off. And then obviously this is just my ignition key, just like any other car. Here's my indicators, left, right. I pull out to turn my four-ways on, and then in order to turn them off, you just go up or down. That turns it off. And then my high beams, you push in on the switch here, and that'll turn your high beams on. And then in the center here, we're looking at, on the left is my RPM gauge. So it's just like any other RPM gauge you would find in your car. The only difference is, in most of your cars, it'll say RPMs times 1,000, but in here it's times 100. So truck's off right now, but typically we idle at around 500 to 600, maybe 700, depending on what the engine wants to be doing. And then max, typically in a diesel truck like this, is around 2,000 RPMs is what it'll really go up to. Anything past that, you're running the risk of damaging the engine. I don't let the truck get over 1,700, so that's right about here. And I usually shift between 15 and 1650, so that's right around there. So between that 150 RPM range right there. Up here we just have our indicator lights on our dash. So as I turn my left one on, right one on, and then this one's my high beam indicator. So when I have my lights on, I turn my high beams on. This light will light up, let me know that my high beams are on. This gauge is my miles per gallon average. So this little tab up top here, it'll actually show you when it's in the green, it means you're being the most fuel efficient. Then it'll go this way if you're being less fuel efficient, and then this way if you're being more fuel efficient. So if I'm going down a hill, it'll go over this way. If I'm climbing a hill, it'll go this way. And then this gauge will read out whatever my average is. It's usually around 7 1/4. And then this is just a blank spot where I could put a clock or something else if I wanted to. And then moving on, just a regular speedometer. As you can see, the truck only goes up to about 80. I've never had the truck go this fast, or been that fast in this truck before. I usually go about 70, 71, 72. And then underneath there is when the truck's on is my odometer, where it tells me my mileage for the truck. Moving on, we got our next set of gauges here. So this is our air pressure. This tells us how much air we have in the tank on the truck, and that helps power the brakes. And then when we hook up to the trailer, it helps run the trailer brakes as well. And then there's two gauges, a green and a red, those needles. And then this one right here is our brake pressure. So our brakes in large trucks like this are powered by air versus hydraulically in your cars or your pickups. So when I push on the brakes, it applies air pressure to release the brakes, or to apply the brakes. And then when I let it go, it goes back down. And then these two gauges here are for my rear axle. So I have two rear axles. I have two drive axles versus like a car, we only have the one. So this is telling me what the temperature is like inside those two rear axles. So if they start to climb, that lets me know there's something going on. Like I might have a wheel seal leaking, so I'm losing oil, which would make those run a lot hotter, or there's something binding up in there, or there's something broken, and I can check and make sure that temperature gauge isn't rising, because if it is, then I need to pull over and check whether it's my rear axle or my forward rear axle. And then I got two fuel gauges. This one's not hooked up because the fuel gauges would read the same no matter what. So this is just my main fuel gauge. I'm at about half a tank, which in this truck means I got about 100 gallons of fuel left. And then moving on, I got my transmission temperature, which is kind of the same deal as my engine oil. But what these trucks, the transmission usually runs anywhere from 2 to 225 is about where it'll be when I'm running. And it's pretty simple. As long as it's in the green, you're good to go. Once it starts climbing out past the green, then you're going to want to slow down, stop, let it cool off, and then look and see what you might be able to find. If anything's wrong, if it's leaking oil, or if you got something jammed up, or if it's making a funny sound, you'll want to know. And that's what's nice about having all these gauges. You can actually pinpoint what the problem is with the truck before you have to do anything. And then this gauge right here is the air suspension. So this is for those drive axles on the rear. So depending on how heavy the trailer is, this will go up or down. So now that I'm parked and don't have a trailer hooked up, it's all the way down to almost zero. But when I have a fully loaded trailer on, this gauge, this needle will spin all the way up just above 60 pounds. And that would indicate that I've got a little over 33,000 pounds on the drive axles of the truck. And the legal limit for me is 34,000 pounds. So this is a good kind of quick and easy way to check to make sure I'm driving legal with my weights on my drive axles and everything else. Because if I notice that this is way over here to like 70 or 80, then I'm way over my weight and I need to do some adjustments to either the truck or the trailer. And I can go over that in a different video. And then this final gauge here is my fuel filter indicator, which is kind of the same deal as my air filter. And what this is just measuring is any particulates that might be in the fuel tanks, whether I get it from the fuel pumps when I'm pumping it, or just older truck in general, things start to kind of rust out, and things, little bits of metal and what have you, dirt might fall in there while I'm putting fuel in. And this just lets me know that if it's really dirty, I need to pull it out, clean it out, either clean it out and then put it back in, or just replace it all completely in general. But this is one thing just to always keep an eye on. Just like all these other gauges, it'll let you know if something is going wrong with the truck, and it'll help you pinpoint where you should look first. And then below these gauges, I have this gauge here, which looks like your average oven timer, and unfortunately it's not what it's for. What this does is you can actually set an idle time for your truck. So if you wanted to, let's say you're running in a hot desert and you want your engine to kind of cool down, you can turn this dial to, let's say, 12 minutes, and then after 12 minutes it'll actually shut your truck off for you, which is a nice deal, because some guys will just run, and then just shut the truck off right away and don't let it kind of cool down and settle down. So it's a kind of a cheap and easy way to kind of work around that. And then here's my heating and air conditioning controls. Pretty simple. You got all your different kind of selection options with your vents and everything like that, similar to a car, just a little bit more manual form of it. And then we'll go over here to my nice collection of switches here. So I've got these main 3 switches are the ones that I use every night when I'm driving. These 2 right here are my marker lights and like my tail lights. And then this switch right here is just my regular headlights. So when I'm driving, if I have this switch up, it's on, but I can also tab it up like that and it doesn't stay. And what this does is if I pass a truck or I need to indicate to somebody that something's going on, I can hit this and it'll flick the marker lights on my trailer on and off, which will help kind of, it's a convenient thing for other drivers. A lot of times you'll see truckers at night, they'll flash their headlights as another truck's passing them. And then this is a good way to say thank you for letting us know that we're clear to move back over. And then here's a switch for my fog lights. I don't usually run these because they don't really help too much around here, but it's always nice to have that. And then down here we've got my 2 switches for my engine brake. This switch right here turns them on and off. And then this switch here indicates how much engine brake I want. So 1, 2, or 3. And so when I switch it on, as soon as I let off the gas or off the throttle, I'll get either 1 cylinder, 2 cylinders, 3 cylinders of engine brake. And basically what that does is it turns those cylinders almost into like an air compressor, and it fills those cylinders with air. So as they come up, they're pushing, trying to compress air, which slows the engine down, which will in turn slow the truck down because the truck's in gear. And it's an easier way to slow down the truck when you're going downhill, especially with a load on. It helps save your brakes so you're not wearing out your brakes a lot faster, because when you got 70 to 80,000 pounds on a truck, that's a lot of weight to be slowing down, and you don't want to be wearing out your brakes with everything, all that weight on there. And if you can use the engine to help you, you want to do that first. And then right next to that we have cruise control, which is super convenient for somebody like me who drives for about 5 hours every night. So just like in your car, you got one switch turns it on, and another one that sets it, and then you can resume. And then just like any other car, you push down, and I can speed up about a mile an hour, half a mile an hour, and then I can push down and it'll slow it down a mile an hour, half mile an hour. Here's my wiper control. So turn to the right and it'll do the intermediate, like in most cars, we'll just kind of swipe it every now and then it'll keep rotating. And as I rotate, it'll pick up the speed faster and faster, and then it'll go to where I can go on and on and on. And then if I push in, it'll actually spray and clean the window. And then this switch right here is my mirror heat. So I've got heated mirrors on the truck, which is really convenient in the wintertime. So getting close to around this time of year, we start getting frost at nights. And my mirrors will actually frost over when I'm driving, so I can't see out of them. So what I could do is flick the switch on, and it'll turn little heating elements on in the mirrors, which will in turn melt that frost away, so then I can see out of my mirrors again, which is a huge safety thing to have, especially in the Midwest, where we get cold nights, and in the wintertime when we get freezing rains and snows and all that stuff. Moving on over here, so we got fifth wheel slide, unlock, lock. So this allows me to slide the fifth wheel on the tractor, which is where the trailer hooks up to, and I can either push it forward closer to the truck to put more weight on the front of the truck, or push it all the way to the back to put more weight on the rear of the truck to get my weights right. And then here's my air suspension. I've gone over that in the other video. This will release the air in the suspension on the truck to help me lower the trailer down and make the either connection or disconnection from the trailer a lot smoother and not as rough, and easier on the truck and the trailer at the same time. And then right here is my last switch that I'm going to go over, or the last switch on the dash here, is my differential lock. So most pickups nowadays have like a little button on the dash or a little dial that'll lock your differential. So that what that does is it locks the tires, the drive tires, together, so that if one might be slipping but the other one has traction, it'll let them both spin at the same speed. So if I'm stuck in a gravel lot, or in the wintertime when I get into snowy or icy conditions, I can lock my differential so I have all 4 sets of tires in the rear spinning at the same speed, which will help me pull myself out of whatever position I might be in just to get moving. Then once I move, and I unlock it again and then drive just like normal. And the final 2 switches or gauges I'm gonna go over are these 2. So this red one right here is my trailer air brakes, or trailer brake supply, and then this one's the tractor supply. So this one controls the brakes for the truck. So instead of having a normal parking brake like most cars and pickups do, where you either slide your shifter up or you have a constant shifter and put it all the way up in the park, this is my park brake. So when I put my truck into neutral, I pull this out, and that releases the brakes on the truck, so it locks the brakes up, and that's what keeps me stopped and stops the truck from rolling around. And it's the same deal with this for the trailer. So once I hook up to my trailer, I push this in, and that supplies air to the trailer that releases the brakes. And then when I'm getting ready to drive away, I'll push this in as well, and that releases the brakes on the truck. And then when I stop, I can pull both of these out, and it'll lock the brakes up for both. And I think that about covers it. Oh, we'll also go over this. So this bar here, some people call it a Johnny bar. What this does is it kind of acts as a temporary trailer brake. This red button does down here. So if you're wanting to test your trailer brakes before you're leaving or pulling out, make sure your trailer's all hooked up, what you can do is you can pull on this bar, and it'll actually lock your trailer brakes up, and then you can just release it and push it all the way up. It's also, if you're in a bad situation on a highway or on a side road where your trailer is fishtailing, you can pull on this and it'll lock your trailer brakes up but not lock up your truck brakes, and you can regain control of your trailer. It's a very similar situation or similar setup as in pickups that have trailer brake supplies, where it's just that little lever that you kind of squeeze together. It's the same thing, it's just a little bit different style, and obviously a little bit more important on a big semi, especially when you go down the road with a heavy load like 60 to 70,000 pounds. I think that about covers everything inside here. If you guys want, I'll do a full cab tour where I'll go back through and I can talk about the steering wheel, talk about the shifter, and go through the bunk and everything like that. And I can also go over some of the things that I carry with me every night. But I think that's all I got for you guys today. So go truck yourself.